Tonight we go deep. 3 caving stories that start with confidence and end in chaos. 1 wrong turn, 1 missed warning, 1 moment underground where everything falls apart. Viewer discretion is advised. In the first story of tonight's episode, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky is the longest cave on Earth. 686 kilometers of mapped passage, and every year the survey adds more. Nobody alive has seen all of it. On March 14, 2019, Nora Quinn walked into it with a survey team of 5. Her helmet lamp fresh with 12 hours of battery life, a spare light riding in her pack, and 18 months of training behind her. Nora was 26 years old, a graduate student and second-season survey volunteer, precise with a sketchbook and happiest at the back of the line. Her mother texted her the same thing before every trip, and she answered the same way. Back by dinner. Here is what you need to understand about the longest cave on Earth. It is not one cave. It is a stacked maze on 5 levels, and passages that look identical run for kilometers before they choose different endings. The survey exists because the map is never done. 5 stacked levels, passages that mimic each other for kilometers, new territory opening every season. Volunteers train one rule until it is reflex, and the rule is simple. If you are ever off the map, you stop moving. The first 6 hours run like clockwork, the good kind of boring. The team split at a junction called the Elbow, agreed on a 4 o'clock turnaround, and Nora's party pushed into a dry upper level, mapping as they went. She sketched 300 meters of brand new passage that afternoon, clean pages and good numbers, in a corner of the system no light had ever touched. It was, she said later, the best survey day of her life, until the moment it wasn't. At 3:30, that is the moment the trip stopped being routine. Because Nora stepped back to photograph a formation, her foot found loose breakdown, and she slid 8 meters into a passage the map did not have yet. The fall was small, but the landing was wrong, and her main light died on the rock. Died because the impact sheared its mount, the one component she carried no spare for. The slope she had slid down was a smooth chute she could not climb blind. What she didn't know, her spare light was in the pack she had left at the survey station, 8 meters above. She shouted once, and the rock ate it whole. She tried the chute. Gravel scraped loose. Her grip failed twice. Nothing held. Panic arrived right on time, and she refused it. Then she did the hardest thing a lost caver ever does. She sat down and stopped. Total darkness is not like night. Your eyes never adjust because there is nothing to adjust to. The only sounds were dripping water and her own breathing. Her phone had no signal and 40% of battery left, so she rationed its screen the way you ration water in a desert. Watch the surface numbers. Her party missed her within 20 minutes. By 6 o'clock, 30 searchers were inside. By midnight, there were 80 people underground, 4 dog teams, and a command post running off the cave's own survey books. But her passage was not on the map yet, which was the entire reason her team had been sent into that level in the first place. Searchers passed 30 meters from her twice that night, and she heard none of it. Day 2 underground, and this is the part that decides everything in a lost caver case. She kept her rules. She stayed put, sipping the 1 bottle that had fallen with her, a capful an hour by the phone's clock. She kept warm the only way the cave allows, knees to chest on her rope bag, hands in her armpits, 54 degrees eating at her from the stone. Every half hour she banged a carabiner on the wall, 3 sharp taps, down passages nobody had ever walked. That habit would turn out to be the entire story. Searchers work in silent sweeps. Everyone stops moving at once, kills their lights, and listens to the dark for 2 full minutes at a time, letting the cave speak if it has anything to say. It feels like superstition. It is procedure, and it has found people for 100 years. At 2:40 on the morning of day 3, 61 hours after the fall, a sweep team killed their lights at an upper-level junction and stood listening to the dark. And out of that dark came 3 faint taps. A rest and 3 taps more. 90 more minutes traced the sound to the chute where she had been trapped since Tuesday. And the first light found Nora Quinn at the bottom, hand still on the carabiner, asking in a paper-dry voice whether her sketchbook had survived. She came out at dawn on a walking assist, 64 hours down, 4 kilos lighter, cold to the bone, but whole. The hospital in Bowling Green kept her one night for dehydration and released her. The report ran 11 pages and ruled the fall an accident on unmapped ground. The passage she found the hard way now carries her survey number. Nora still volunteers at the longest cave on Earth. She carries her spare light on her belt now, not in her pack. And when new volunteers ask why, she tells them what 61 hours of darkness taught her. The cave doesn't take your light. It takes your assumptions. In our second story tonight, Painted Cave on Santa Cruz Island is one of the longest sea caves on Earth, a quarter of a mile deep into the island's volcanic flank, with an entrance 12 stories tall that the ocean walks into and out of twice a day. On October 9th, 2022, Marta Reyes paddled into it alone at slack tide, with 90 minutes of calm water on the tide table, in a swell forecast that was already wrong. Marta was 43 years old, a guide with 11 seasons in the Channel Islands, the one who checked every spray skirt twice. Her daughter crossed off her trips on a kitchen tide chart. Her husband ran the support boat, and their rule was simple: radio check every hour. Here is what you need to understand about sea caves. They breathe with the tide. At low water, they offer galleries that do not exist 6 hours later, and the doorway you paddled in through is not always given back. Painted Cave runs back through 4 chambers, each one darker and quieter than the last, until the daylight behind you is a coin held at arm's length, and the water under you has never once seen the sun. The first half hour was the trip she had made 100 times, the good kind of familiar. Her half-hour radio check was 2 words: all quiet. She photographed the painted lichen walls of the second chamber for the winter catalog, and drifted with one hand resting on the cool rock, listening to the sea lions barking their endless arguments near the entrance. At 40 minutes in, that is the moment the trip stopped being routine, because the light at the entrance dimmed in a rhythm instead of a flicker, and the first big set wave stood up in the mouth of the cave, because a storm swell from a system 600 miles south had arrived 9 hours early. The surge picked her kayak up and set it down a boat length deeper into the cave, then did it again, patiently, the way the ocean does everything. The cave had begun, very gently, to swallow. What she didn't know yet, the honest word for her situation, was already trapped, because the swell was still building and the mouth of the cave now belonged to it. She turned the bow and drove hard for the entrance, and the first wave spun her sideways like a toy. The second broke her paddle. Her hip found rock. Panic knocked. It got no answer. She braced on the stub of the shaft, 11 seasons doing the talking. The mouth was a white machine now, waves booming wall to wall, spray hissing off the rock. Going out through that was a verdict. So she did the unthinkable, correct thing. She went deeper. Watch her numbers now. 6 hours to the next low tide. 10 hours of darkness after that. 50 degrees of water, taking her heat every minute. And one ledge in the third chamber, a meter above the surge, that 11 seasons had taught her to remember. She hauled onto the ledge with the bow line in her teeth, against a sea that wanted the boat. She kept both boat and bag. The radio inside was dead, flooded through a sprung hatch. She wrung out her jacket, wrapped the space blanket around her shoulders, and began the oldest work in survival, staying warm enough to still be a person when help came. By 10 o'clock, the shivering arrived in waves she could no longer schedule. Just after midnight, a rogue set swept the ledge and took the kayak. On the hour, every hour, her partner's radio call went unanswered, and that silence would turn out to be her rescue. One missed check is a dead battery. 2 missed checks, by their own hard rule, is a mayday. By 8 o'clock, a Coast Guard cutter stood off the entrance, spotlight on the white chaos of the mouth. No boat was going in through that. The swell had the cave until the tide window opened. Inside, Marta heard engines 300 meters away and did the hardest math of her night. They knew, and it changed nothing yet. She banged the paddle shaft on the rock. 3 strikes. Rest. 3 strikes. Alive. At 4:50 in the morning, slack low tide, the mouth of the cave lay down at last. A rescue swimmer came through the entrance chambers with a light like a sunrise and found her on the ledge where she had been trapped for 17 hours, shaking, lucid, furious at the ocean. They floated her out on the swimmer's sled through water gone suddenly, insultingly gentle. The hospital in Santa Barbara treated her for hypothermia and released her the next afternoon. The incident report ruled it a forecast failure, not a guiding error. The swell had jumped 9 hours ahead of its model, and the tour company now closes the cave on any southern system. Full stop. Marta was back guiding the longest sea cave on the Pacific coast within 30 days. She tells every new client the same thing at the entrance. The cave doesn't keep hours. The ocean does. And for tonight's final story, the pit is the deepest cenote in Quintana Roo, a flooded shaft in the Mexican jungle that drops 119 meters through gin-clear water, past a ghost white cloud of hydrogen sulfide that hangs at 30 meters like weather. On May 17th, 2023, Victor Hale geared up on its limestone rim with 220 bar on his back, 3 stage bottles in the water, and a schedule he was already 20 minutes behind. Victor was 44 years old, a technical diver with 9 years of deep cenote work, who labeled everything twice and got teased for it. His wife had stopped asking about the depths years ago. She asked only what time he would call. His answer never changed. Before dinner, mi amor. Here is what you need to understand about deep diving. Past 40 meters, the gas on your back stops being simple air and becomes chemistry with a schedule. Different depths demand different mixtures, carried in separate bottles. The mixture that saves your life at 6 meters, pure oxygen, becomes a poison at 20. Breathe it deep enough, and the body's alarm is a seizure with no warning shot. Every bottle is labeled with a depth where it is legal. The labels are the whole religion. The dive down was the one he had made 60 times, a slow drop past the sulfide cloud, torch beams standing in the dark like columns, the shaft breathing cold stillness up at him and his buddy, Dario. They turned at 102 meters, on schedule, on gas, and started the long staircase home, the part that is nothing but patience and arithmetic. At the 21-meter stop, that is the moment the dive stopped being arithmetic, because Victor reached for his mid-water bottle and his hand closed on the wrong one. Because that morning, 20 minutes behind, he had clipped his stages in a hurry and never run the check he was famous for. Both bottles were white, and both regulators were yellow, and the depth tape had failed him quietly, worn to a shadow. What he didn't know as he made the switch, the bottle in his hand was the pure oxygen, legal at 6 meters, poison at 21. That shortcut would now collect its fee, and the pit had all the time in the world. For 2 minutes, nothing happened, because oxygen toxicity is quiet right up until it is absolute. Then his jaw tightened, his torch slipped, his body seized, the regulator fell from his mouth. Dario was on him in 3 kicks, one arm locking the convulsing body, the other hunting for the lost regulator in a roaring storm of bubbles. Watch the arithmetic. Dario was trapped inside. 21 meters of water overhead. 40 minutes of decompression owed to his own blood. 2 lungs beside him that could not be allowed to hold their breath on the way up, or they would burst. And this is the part that decides everything about a seizure at depth. A convulsing diver cannot keep a regulator in his mouth, and the water does not wait for the convulsion to pass. Dario got the spare regulator seated and held it there with his palm, gas hissing on the purge past clenched teeth, and began hauling his friend upward through his own decompression ceiling, trading his blood's safety against Victor's minutes. He compressed 40 minutes of decompression into 9. Somewhere above the sulfide cloud, he felt the first deep itch of the bends arriving in his shoulders and kept kicking. They broke the surface into hot jungle light and the screaming of birds. Guides dragged them onto the platform. Dario, half crippled, was still doing compressions when the evacuation helicopter cleared the tree line. Victor Hale never took another breath. The seizure had opened his airway to the water at 21 meters, and the deepest cenote in Quintana Roo had done the rest quietly, the way water does everything. Dario spent 11 hours in the chamber at Playa del Carmen and surfaced with his shoulders full of ghosts, but alive. The investigation ruled the death a gas switch error, seconded by worn labels and a hurried surface check. 3 small failures stacked into one fatal one. The report changed how that community dives. Every switch now requires a buddy's eyes on the label and a hand signal back. No exceptions, no hurry, honored. Victor's wife got the call at dinner time, but not from him. On the rim of the deepest cenote in Quintana Roo, 6 meters from the water, there is a small steel plaque now, and divers touch it on the way in, the way you touch a door frame in an earthquake, to remember what holds and what doesn't.